If you've ever played a contact sport, you will know how important a good mouthguard can be to protect your teeth.
And now they are being used to help safeguard another part of players' bodies, their brains.
Let's explain this. Though these mouthguards aren't just any old ones. These ones are being tested by Leeds Rhinos rugby league players, and they're fitted with technology to measure the impact of tackles, which of course may cause concussion. Tanya Arnold explains.
Rugby league is a collision sport. You can't change that. But these new mouthguards will gather data on what each player is experiencing.
So a normal gum shield would obviously be to protect the teeth. And these have embedded technology, so batteries, accelerometers and gyroscopes, and because the teeth and the upper jaw is fixed to the skull, we can then look at how fast and how forceful the head's moving on impact.
Leeds Beckett is leading the study, testing out several different makes to determine which they feel performs the best.
We're looking at how these mouthguards perform in the laboratory, so when we hit them with a pendulum, how they perform on the field, so when a player gets tackled or doesn't get tackled, so we're looking at the false positive, false negative, so you know the accuracy of them. And then we're also really important to understand the players' fit, comfort and function, because they have to wear them, they have to embrace the new technology.
This is Leeds Rhinos academy player Mackenzie Turner being tackled while wearing one of the mouthguards, and this is the data from it.
On our graph here we can see the linear acceleration, which is measured as g-force, and that corresponds to the y-axis, which is this direction through your head. So it's a negative peak, so we know that the linear acceleration is to the left, so we know that he must have been hit to the right of his head.
The collision was measured at a force of around 25 G. They haven't yet put a figure on when concussion occurs.
Sort of anywhere sort of north of 70 G is usually, that's when we start to sort of get a bit worried that there might be a concussion there, but at the minute we don't really know exactly where that figure is, that value is. It's just about monitoring it and trying to get an understanding for what players are going through.
Concussion in sport and its long-term effects have become a big issue, but Mackenzie admits it's not something he's currently thinking about.
I think long-term, yeah, probably it's good to know, but you know, when I'm playing and stuff, I don't really think about that. I just think about playing and doing my job.
It's a view echoed by England and Leeds fullback Caitlin Beavers, who's been playing the game since she was 6, but she's fascinated by how the information gathered can transform the game.
I'm interested in anything factual, scientific, and the fact that we can look at our data and it can actually be brought back to training, and how we can save us from hitting those type of impacts.
Rugby League hopes to roll out the preferred mouthguard to all levels of the game later this year. It's early days in the study, but as more data is collected, so the understanding of what each player's brain is being put through in both matches and training will grow. Tanya Arnold, BBC News, Leeds.
Right, some fascinating facts from that report. Let's talk to Professor Ben Jones, who's leading the study with Leeds Beckett University. Joins us here in Salford. Morning to you. And we've got the Leeds Rhino winger, Tom Briscoe, who's in Leeds as well. Morning, Tom. Good to have you with us as well. Shall we start with this study? And a lot of it was explained in that report there. Some of the things that kind of really struck me, firstly, just the noise of when you're slammed into on the pitch. Some of the numbers, 70 G, that force. Now, I was getting confused because you think of like 5G, you know, the force like when you're taking off in a spaceship, and we're always told about the pressure on the body. But this is instantaneous pressure, isn't it, at a peak? Just explain kind of how that could feel and the physical impact it has.
Yeah, I think the important part is that we monitor the frequency of the collision as well as the magnitude. We're still learning around the magnitude of the collisions. We know that high magnitude collisions, so when you're getting into 70 G higher, you know, they could be a concussive instance, but equally we're really interested in the lower magnitude that players are exposed to as well. Because
I think there are some studies, and Tom, you can tell me this, some studies suggest that professional rugby players could be exposed to 11,000 contact events per season. Now, they're obviously, Tom, not all going to be at 70 G, but does that sound like kind of realistic? Does that sound in your experience?
It sounds scary if you put it in numbers like that. I think it kind of passes you by. You don't realise how many contacts you might be involved in, and when you get the figures put in front of you, it's, like I say, pretty scary and one to probably consider for the future.
Tom, can I ask, we're looking at some of the images as you're talking there, of some of the hits, these moments of collision. And I think people gasp sometimes when there's an ouch, and that could be supporters, you know, thinking, great, you know, the tackle or whatever. When you are hit like that, do you know instinctively, do alarm bells ring as you recoil from one of those collisions, thinking, I don't know what this is doing to me?
At the moment in time, you're probably not thinking about that. I think most of them look worse than how they feel. But I think it's more, like you say, the physicality of what it's doing to your body without you even knowing. And I think that's what's been great to get these mouth guards and to provide that information and data, I suppose, to safeguard against anything like that in the future.
Tom, when the data come through, what, you know, and it shows the impact it's having on you. I mean, you said you started just when I gave those numbers before, you said you just don't think about it that way, and it sounds quite scary. Do you think it's going to change the way that players approach the game and approach the physicality of the game?
I think it'll change more the training and day-to-day situation. I think in a game situation where you're live and everything's on the line, it's all or nothing, isn't it? With the game, you've got to put your body in the same positions regardless of the data that's being collected. But I think, like I say, during the training days and the contact sessions that we do have, it's probably looking more at that as a way to minimise the contacts.
Professor, do you want to pick up on some of this for us? Because the sport themselves are now, some people say far too late, taking it seriously, and which is presumably part of the reason you're doing it. But they've changed the rules, haven't they? So that direct contact with the head is outside of the rules. You can get penalised for it. So what more can be done in a contact sport to protect the players? Notwithstanding, more information is good, but there's a principle here, which is at some point you're going to have one person slamming into another. They've already outlawed hitting directly certain parts are the most worrying in connection with concussion. So what can be done?
I think the important part is to understand the load that players are exposed to and the loads that players are exposed to in areas we don't understand. I think we shouldn't forget that rugby league is a physical contact sport, but it's also skillful. A good tackle is a dominant tackle where the tackler is in control, they place their head in a safe position and they look after the ball carrier. An accidental tackle, an accidental head collision is poor tackle technique, it's not deliberate, so therefore it's not just about two players running into each other. We've got to recognise the skill components. So what we've got to do is we've got to understand from a game perspective what's a safe and effective tackle, which is being in control of the ball carrier dominantly, but then also safely as well. But then also looking at how we can support coaches and clubs to actually train that tackle safely. It'd be naive to say, don't do any tackle training in the week because there's a risk that you might bang your head, and then put them on a pitch for 80 minutes in front of crowds and expect them to then do that safely.
And one of the points I know you make, Tom, maybe you can pick up on this for us, is just how often you're required, not only on match day, but in training to go through these rituals, because I know there's evidence from elsewhere, including America, around the number of concussions that happen in training. I think they say there's some 20% of all concussions take place in training. Now, you're required, presumably, you know, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, to do that work, and that in itself is a risk.
Potentially, like you say, with 20% of the concussions happening in training. For us, personally at Leeds, I think we do 2 wrestle sessions where there is an increased amount of contact during them sessions. But then, yeah, it's daily. We obviously train with the ball, and like Ben says, it's about a skill component as well. So you've got to train that. And there's potential there for collisions and contact. And I think that's what Ben's trying to get at, that you just don't know how many contacts or where the most amount of contacts is going to be. I think obviously during games will be the highest numbers because that's when you're giving 100%. But it's about the amount of little contacts and knowing whether that's doing any lasting damage as well.
Ben, when's the data due?
So we've finished the validity study at the moment, and that will be published in the next few weeks.
Tom, quick word. When you're on the pitch now or in training, if someone is careless, is it called out much more often now? And is it much more taboo to be careless, you know, and the excuse of, you know, it's the passion of the game, you know, we want to win, we're fighting for the team. Has the attitude changed?
Yeah, I think, like you say, the rule change and becoming more stricter during games has had a massive effect. You don't see many players taken off the ball or getting knocked out in those situations. And in training, it's kind of less apparent during training. It was never a big thing. People being concussed in training, from my personal experiences, there's been very few in the contact areas. Having done 15 seasons now, I think I might have seen about 1 or 2 in training. So I think for training wise, it's pretty minimal anyway. But I think the big ones has been in games, like you say, with the rule changes and the strictness of how they're policing that as well.
Well, Tom, it's good to talk to you. Tom Briscoe with Leeds Rhinos. Stay safe. Good luck with the training and the matches as well. And Professor Ben Jones from Leeds Beckett University, also good to see you. Good luck with that study.
Thank you.